guys registered in Japan or in Australia?
To be fair, you are not good at kanji.
Now I'm 100% sure it's not sagi.
I feel like kids are lost with the identities. I'm talking about you as well.
Alright, so welcome back to my channel. I actually got a special guest today.
You're talking about me?
Yes.
Am I
you always say that, like, are you talking about me?
I just feel so honored every time you call me your special guest. I wish you...
How do you want me to say? My common guest here.
No,
my regular guest here.
That is actually true. I am your regular guest.
Okay, I will say that from now.
No, special guest sounds more tokubetsu.
You always make sounds like you don't want me to say that.
No, that's not true. Please, go ahead. It makes me feel special.
Anywho, today I want to answer some questions I've got about international marriage.
Yay, but first of all, thank you so much for coming back to our podcast.
It is for my YouTube. I told you I'm recording.
Oh, it's a YouTube or podcast? Which one is it?
YouTube.
You lied to me.
I didn't.
You did. Okay, all right. Welcome back to the YouTube channel, everyone.
Anywho,
okay.
So, in our previous video, we've talked about how we met story.
Yes.
And then that time I got quite a lot of questions from you guys who is actually doing international relationship as well.
Okay, yeah.
So I want to answer those questions as well. By the way, we're married.
By the way, we're married. Thank you. Thank you for that, but okay.
Okay, the first question is, did you guys registered in Japan or in Australia?
We registered in Japan first, since that's where we were living and that's also where we met. So yes, we first registered in Japan.
So we married in Japan, then moved to Australia.
Yes.
And how was the whole process to register in Japan?
For me,
as international marriage?
For me, it was extremely easy. I did nothing. I just showed up.
For me, that was extremely hard.
To be fair, you are not good at kanji.
That's not... I mean, if you have married in Japan as domestic, I don't want to say that, but as a domestic couple, they just need to register the marriage certificate.
Okay.
But as international marriage, that was hard for you too. First, we needed to go to Australia embassy.
Yes.
Then we got your I don't know, what was it called?
It basically it's actually something required by Japan. I needed to get it from my embassy from Australia. So basically, it's just a certificate to say that I am not married in Australia, basically.
Yeah. It basically says he's actually single, he doesn't have any kids, he hasn't gotten divorced before.
Yes, and I am who I am, basically, also as well. It also proves my identity, also proves the fact that I'm Australian.
Yeah, that was good for me. Now I'm 100% sure it's not sagi.
Yeah, because you have to...
After seeing like international marriage scam in Japan, you've seen that, right?
Yes, I have. But you know what gets me is that as an international person, I need to prove all of that. But I know so many people who get married, who also are in relationship in Japan. And they end up having a second wife, third wife, secret family, secret kids. I know personally 2 people, Japanese people, who were in relationship with married people. And they didn't know. Obviously, they didn't know. They were not that kind of people.
I'm not gonna ask you about it anymore.
If anything, international people need to go through so much more process in order to prove that they are who they are. Whereas there's, Japanese people living there, marrying somebody who has 2 kids and 2 wives.
That's so crazy. Let's go back to the subject.
Oh yeah, let's go back to the subject. So
we need to go to embassy to get the certificate for him, and then I needed to translate every single one in Japanese. And then I did research. I did proper research, then got all the documentation, and then I brought everything. But the city hall told me like, oh, you gotta translate this and this and that as well. You need this and this and that. And then I needed to write down everything there.
Correct.
And then one of our friends who married recently in Japan, they were also international marriage. They said the city hall didn't accept that for a week.
Yes, that's right.
I can't believe that.
But that makes sense. Like, I feel like there's so much fraud. That's how we say sagi, by the way. So much fraud in Japan when it comes to marriages, when it comes to identity. It just happens a lot. There's a lot of people who have this fantasy and idea about marriage when it comes to Japanese society. One, women are pressured into getting married at a certain age, usually around 25. And also second is that, marrying is like an end goal. Like, it's something that you're supposed to do. It is way of life of being in Japanese society. You are not shakaijin if you are completely single.
It's just the way you think.
Is it?
I don't know.
Is it really the way I think?
I don't know.
Guys, feel free to criticize me or say some, have your own opinions.
If you say
about
like
this.
that, it sounds really toxic. Yeah. So what was it? Anywho, the whole process was kind of hard for me.
Not that much for me.
What did you do for your last name?
So we obviously have the choice, I think, as foreigners to keep either your name or my name.
Yeah, that's the only way to have the separate last name with your partner in Japan is to get married with foreigner. So we had choice to keep our own last name or to change for one of the last name. I think if you wanted to change to my last name, that could be. You can, but it could be harder.
It could be, but I think I could because so many, foreign men and women get married into Japanese families, and they usually pick the Japanese.
I do, but I did some research. Then that was saying like we need to prove why you need a Japanese last name.
I think in most cases, proving is just to say like it's for work.
I know, but it still had some process. Anywho. The fact is, I changed my last name to his last name.
Yes.
Why? Because I personally don't prefer my last name.
And also my family prefers it if my wife has my last name. So it's kind of worked for both of us.
Yeah. That was fine for me. But initially we were thinking to keep our own last name till we get our kids. But however, in Japan it says if you're gonna change your last name after more than 6 months you got married, you need to go to the lawyer then say like why. I need to tell them the reason why I didn't change my last name more than 6 months, but I want to change it now.
Even now, I think I wanted to do it. I don't know yet, but it's not so much that we want to change our last name. But for example, when we do have kids, I wanted to keep, your name or some level of your name as a middle name for our child, just because it feels more in balance with the culture. I think it's so important for kids to understand that they're not just part of one culture, they're part of like multiple cultures, because it gives them a better sense of identity, especially now because I feel like kids are lost with the identities. I'm talking about you as well.
My point of view that, keeping my last name then change later has much more things to do. So I don't mind, like, why not to do that now? Then I just straight away changed it after I registered. But if you want to keep your own, just go ahead. Like, if you're going to marry to a foreigner person, you can keep it. You have option.
I think it's quite important that if you're living in Japan, it's probably going to help you a lot more if you have a Japanese last name. And I know it sounds really weird or bad, but that's reality.
Yeah, I think if you're going to stay in Japan, that will be a little bit difficult to get your foreigner partner's last name. I don't know. Okay. How was your parents' reaction when you guys told them you guys gonna do international marriage?
I think my parents were completely okay with it because they understood. First of all, we're an international couple. It's different cultures, and after COVID, I don't think marriages and ceremonies are that as much as important as they used to be. I think people understand how, with the cost of living, with so many people not being able to travel or anything like that, it's unrealistic to do crazy weddings anymore. So my parents were completely okay with it.
My mom was like, "Oh my god!" in a good, like, she reacted in a good way. Like, both of our parents were not like, "You cannot marry to foreigners."
I'm very
We're
glad.
lucky,
Yeah, I'm very glad
lucky.
none of our parents were really against foreigners getting married or anything like that. And also, my parents, traveled to Japan before, and they're quite familiar with Japanese culture as well, even before then.
Yeah.
So, we were completely okay with having a Japanese bride.
Yeah, I mean,
example.
For my mom as well, the first country she traveled international was Australia. So she was like, "Oh my god, all the Aussie guys are so freaking handsome and smelly."
And smelly. I particularly remember she said smelly. Now, I will say this. Asians have a particular gene that actually allows them not to have any
Lucky.
any odor when they're sweating. And also it's the same gene that prevents them from building earwax. Now, we are not lucky like you guys to have that kind of gene. So we have really smelly armpits when we sweat, like normal human beings. And we also have earwax as well. So, we use deodorants.
The deodorant section in Australia is massive.
I know.
In Japan, that's just tiny.
To me, that's a problem as well. I will get back to that. Because the amount of ojisans and fucking salaried men who stink in the train is too much. Use a bloody deodorant. But then at the same time, I hear so many girls in Japan go like, "Oh my god, you smell like deodorant. Kusai. Smells bad."
Are
because they're not used to. No.
Are you talking about particularly me? Who is the Japanese girls?
No.
Who is it?
Unfortunately for you, I had a life before I met you in Japan.
Fuck off.
I met other people.
Fuck off.
Just a little bit mehera desu yo. So
F off.
So I will say this, there are also my students as well. I was teaching in public schools, and a lot of my shogakko kids especially, they would say, you smell so much. What is that smell? Why do you put on cologne? Why do you
put so much perfume as well.
Why do you do that? But my high school kids were actually a lot more understanding, and I'm guessing because as you become teenager, you do smell more.
Yeah.
So my teenagers were okay with it. They were like, makes sense, but they were like, "Oh, I hope you don't take the public transport. People will probably smell that." And I'm like,
ouch.
"Oh man, what am I supposed to do? Smell bad in the train and then get to, But that's the thing, in Japanese culture, it's okay to smell bad as your sweat, but it's not good to smell like, I don't know, cologne or deodorant. So they're like, "Oh, that's your natural smell." Yeah, it smells, but that's okay.
Anywho.
What?
Our parents were completely okay. How was the time you met your partner's parents?
Mind you, my Japanese was not amazing. International marriages, in my opinion, are much harder than
Which was good for me, to be honest. Like
you could filter out what you didn't want them to say. Basically, like, "Oh, sure."